Okay. So this is going to be the second part and last part of that lecture which we dedicate to Shavuot, the holiday of Shavuot, which is about the giving of the Torah. I'm sorry for my my voice if it is a little bit different, but it's good to have differences. I mean, from time to time a little different voice would add a little bit to the curiosity and to the interest. Well, so we explained several important concepts last week. That this Torah, which we have, which is the mind of God, it would have been difficult to understand why it would be given to the earth, to earthly people. How can you bring the mind of God and to put it in our miniature brains? You understand? And we did explain that there is a big difference between what was meant to be from the very beginning, that which we call the Torah, and the Torah after it was given to us. That before the sin of Adam, the Torah meant the exploration of spiritual vistas that have no end, an unlimited, massive amount of knowledge that it is beyond our possibility even to conceive in our earthly mind. That was what was going to be the Torah before Adam sinned. After Adam Arishon, after he sinned, then the Torah became adapted to his new personality. Now that he sinned, he became more physical, he became more earthly. Therefore, the Torah, by his time, was already more adapted to the physicality of human beings with their weaknesses. By the time the Jewish people, after they were enslaved in Egypt and they were redeemed with Moshe, and by the time they arrived to the mountain of Sinai, the story has changed again, and the Torah that was going to be given to them was the type of Torah that was going to be given to Adam before the sin. Which means God decided now to give the Jewish people the opportunity of a lifetime, never to die, according to the understanding of our sages. Through the learning of this Torah, we were not supposed to taste the taste of death. But then again, we erred. We made the big mistake of the sin of the golden calf. The sin of the golden calf, as brought in the Torah, caused Moshe to come down with the tablets of the law, the original ones, and for him to break it in pieces. And then we all know the story. God wanted to destroy, so to speak, the Jewish people. Moshe holds him back, and he gets some kind of forgiveness for the Jewish people, and God's promise to forgive us in accordance with our intention to change. And then Moshe went back and he brought us a new Torah. It's all the same Torah, but without the spiritual extraordinary essence that was going to be in it, which would have been for us the solution to even death, let alone our personalities that could have been changed to be superior beings. Now, the Torah that was finally given to us was adapted exactly according to frail and weak human being. That's the reason why we have to have commandments like respect your parents, do not kill, do not hate, do not commit this sin and this sin. And all this comes to say that by nature we are very weak, and therefore the Torah comes to tell us what are the wrong things that we shouldn't do. So that's what the Torah. But still, the Torah as we have it today is the text that if it was possible for us to explore in that way that was meant from the very beginning, and the way it is constantly in heaven, it would be endless. And even today, with the advance of science, we are able to discover today more and more what is concealed in the Torah. What we have is only the things that are open for us to understand. But then we discover that there are secrets, formidable secrets, that cover practically all the history of mankind, past, present, and future. Everything. Of course, if we are capable of finding that which we are looking for. So, and that's how we explained last week the fact, the dialogue between the angels and Moshe. The angels protested to God why the Torah should be given to earth when its glory should remain in heaven. Remember? And then God says to Moshe, answer them. And in the beginning Moshe got scared, but then Hashem encouraged him to answer them and advised him to hold on the chair of God. And this way they will not touch him. And then he started to argue with them. Why would you need the Torah? The Torah says, do not kill. Who's the killer? Only a person who is invested with all kinds of criminal and sinful natures, such as hatred, jealousy, and so forth, right? But you, the angels, are clear of all this. So why would you need the Torah? The Torah says when you work the land, on the 7th year you shouldn't work it. Do you have any land? So why would the laws that pertain to the land of Israel, in which way would they be pertaining to you? And that's how apparently he quieted the argument of the angels. But then we ask the very big question. Why? The angels didn't know that? Why in the beginning they protested? They didn't know that the Torah, as we know it, is not for them. So why did they insist on having it up there, not here? And we explained extensively a very important concept, that what the angels thought was that Torah which was before the sin. But now Moshe, through his questions, he's revealing to them that the Torah is going to be adapted to our caliber, our brains, our level. And that shows that has nothing to do with you, the angels, and yet the Torah remains yours. And what we have here is only whatever is fitting human beings, according to their nature and tendencies. But in the meantime, what have we learned from this? That the Torah contains in it tremendous substance that is endless, that is extremely powerful. In the Torah you could find a solution to all the problems, psychological, physical problems, everything. Everything is concealed in the Torah. We brought you the information regarding King Chizkiah. In his time they had a book, which of course was as a result of the learning Torah for some very high level people, big tzaddikim who were able to concentrate into that realm of the Torah, which usually is not for us. And they were able to find the cure for every malady, for every kind of sickness. The only problem is, and in the time of King Chizkiah, they had this book, in which, according even to some scientific revelations of today, I heard it with my own ears by Professor Orbach in the University of Jerusalem, that he said in that book was even the cure for the worst kind of cancers. Everything was there. So that means fantastic. The problem is that now people, when they saw such a thing, they stopped relying on God, and now they have a book that tells them the solution to all their problems. And they stopped praying. So King Chizkiah took upon himself the tragic resolution to bury that book. The Talmud tells us in Masechet Berachot that there were several things that King Chizkiah decided, upon which most of them, the sages of Israel, agreed with him. And one of them to bury the book of cures, which would have been tremendous for all of us, for mankind. And yet, if that would result in the loss of faith in the Almighty, it's not worth it. And apparently here is a king of Israel who knew, who put on the balance the good and the bad. To have a book like this would be so beneficial for mankind. And yet if it means the loss of their faith, since they are going to rely only on a book, it's not worth it. Thank God for that time that we had a king like this. But some people might say, we are sorry that we had a king like this, because if we didn't have him, perhaps today we would have had all the solutions, which is not true. Problem arise always following solutions, and solutions arise also following problems. Anyway, we start now. So God decided to give the Torah to the Jewish people. Very good. We should feel fortunate that we received something that is personal to God. A gift that has no equal. A kind of merchandise that has no value. You cannot put a value to it. And that's what we say every Shabbat. Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al ta'azov. God says, I have given you the best kind of merchandise. Do not reject it. And truly, this is what happened 3,300 years ago. On the mountain of Sinai, we discussed this last week, God asked the nations, would you like to receive the Torah? The nations' answer was, first tell us what is written there. That was their error. Once they asked, they have revealed their true nature, that they will not be able to contend with the Torah like this. And the Torah was not given to the Goyim. But then, when God came to the Jewish people, they all responded spontaneously with the same declaration. Na'aseh v'nishma. We shall hear and obey and listen. And then we discussed last week the tremendous riddle that the Talmud brings when God heard that the Jewish people responded positively to his request. Then it says that he threatened them, and he said to them, either you keep my Torah or there shall be your burial. To which we said, this does not make sense. They already said yes. Why do you threaten them? They did not hesitate. They wanted to receive your Torah. So why do you have to threaten them that they should keep the Torah? They were willing to say yes. And then we explained that perhaps, that's what the Tosfot explains in Masechet Shabbat, that perhaps the Jewish people meant the written Torah without talking about the oral Torah, which is the real essence of the study of Torah by the Jewish people throughout all the generations. That's what we study in all the yeshivot. In the yeshivot, we don't just read the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, and that's all. That we do every Shabbat on the Sefer Torah. But in the yeshiva, what do? We explore that Torah through the study of the Talmud, which is what we call the oral Torah, the oral law. So God says, perhaps you didn't have in mind to include that, therefore you should know that I am grateful, so to speak, that you agreed to accept my Torah. But now that you have accepted, you have to know that without the oral Torah, the written Torah does not mean anything. And that's why he said to them, you must accept the oral Torah, For without it, there will be your burial. What was that? What was the meaning of that? So we explained last week. What was meant is that if you do not keep the oral Torah in conjunction with the written Torah, you will end up disappearing as Jews, which is exactly what happened in our Jewish history 2,000 years ago with the Sadducees, the Tzdukim. 10% of the Jewish people didn't want to believe in the laws as projected by our sages. They said we have only the 5 books of Moses, that's it, the 10 commandments. But the other things that are written in the Talmud, we don't believe in that. Which means, since the Torah does not speak about the revival of the death, of the dead, which is Tchiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead, it means that the Sadducees did not believe in that. And more examples. For example, the Torah does not speak about the world to come, except in hints here and there. So the Sadducees meant that there is no world to come. And that's what it means when you believe only in the 5 books of Moses, the written Torah. Ultimately, there's no question about it that without the oral Torah you cannot understand the written Torah. And if you insist, then you will disappear. And that's what happened exactly to the Sadducees, who in the beginning belonged to the Jewish people, and then later they assimilated with Christianity. That could have been also the lot of the rest of the Jewish people if they did not accept the explanation of the written Torah through the oral Torah of the sages. And that's what we call the Mishnah and the Gemara. In the beginning it was all transmitted orally, up to the age of the 6th generation of the sages of the Mishnah, when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, known as Rabbeinu HaKadosh, gathered all the Mishnayot. He paid a lot of money for that, and he gathered thousands of rabbis, and each one brought what he received by tradition, and they made up the Mishnah. Now, based upon the Mishnah, we have the Gemara, the discussions regarding the laws of the Mishnah, the arguments, the discussions, the philosophies, the concepts, the pilpul, the brain smashing learning of our sages, which is in fact the source of the genius of the Jewish people. That was written in the Gemara, which several generations later, after Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, about 1700 years ago, the last generation of the Emoraim, of the sages of the Gemara, whose leaders, the spiritual leaders were Ravina and Rav Ashe, when they decided to gather all the Gemara, all the discussions that were developed in the houses of study regarding each word of the Torah, and then they closed the book of the Talmud, and since then the Talmud became the source of life of the Jewish people. But we have to understand one thing, that all that we deal, when we say we study Torah, we deal with the things that pertain to our understanding. We deal only with things that have to do with our physicalities and our frailties, weaknesses as human beings. But what is there in the Torah that is concealed in the Torah, which is yet, according to our tradition, that we study after we die, or that what the angel studies, whatever, any way you want to understand it, because since this is the mind of God, so it means that it has an unlimited vista of knowledge and information and intelligence. It's the mind of God. It cannot have a limit. But for us it must have a limit, since we are limited. But in each one of our bodies we have a neshama, which means we have a spiritual energy in us, which gives us the power to think. What gives us the noble thoughts? What gives us the constructive thinking that we have? The neshama, the soul. And that soul feeds on whatever Torah we have. It feeds on it. And it keeps us alive until the day when we rejoin again up there after 120. And then depending how much we did here, we shall continue there. course, this is up to the believer to believe or not. Those who believe have hopes. Those who do not believe, what is it that they have? But once you go engage yourself with the study of Torah in depth, let's take a child, a 14 years old child, whose brain now is all open, and study with him the Talmud. If you know, you are going to discover that the mind of the child is ready to absorb so much, is ready to believe in everything that is there. So why is it that we, with our experienced minds, how come we find it so difficult to believe in many, many things? Whereas a child that does not find it difficult to believe. That's the problem. The problem is that with the age, we accumulate also the negative, thank you, the negative things that surround us in this world that block our possibilities to believe freely. Because we have also psychological complexes. We have also limitations that come from our inferior qualities. And all this brings us a standing block before our possibility to believe. And that's why when we think we are more experienced, that's when we find it more difficult to believe. Whereas a young, bright child who starts studying the Talmud, when he plunges into it, he finds the Talmud the most formidable of all kinds of intelligence. He finds it very interesting. Of course, not every child today, depending on how he is brought up. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niya bidvaro. Now we engage in the following phase. Because until now I gave you almost a repetitive summary of what we already learned, with a few more points that will teach us that in fact this Torah is unbelievable. If you, like our sages said, Imrekhu mikem, if you find the Torah empty, it's only because of you. The more, and watch, among Jews, there are giants. There are tzaddikim whose mind is enormous, extraordinary. And you will see that the more he has, the more interesting is the Torah for him. And if you see any Jew the less he have in Torah, which means the more empty he is, the most difficult it is for him to believe. This by itself should convince us to understand that we are wrong when we don't believe. Because the truth is, the more knowledge you have in Torah, the more you believe. Shouldn't this be the contrary, the opposite of logic? Usually when you learn more, you stop believing in things. You believe only in what you see, in what you learn. But in Torah, the more you invest yourself in Torah, the more you become a great believer in things that even you don't know. But Jews who usually do not believe, you will find them very empty of Torah. How dare they say that they believe or not if they have nothing to offer? It's like somebody who says, I don't believe in mathematics because he never knew what is the meaning of a mathematical function. Understand what I mean? When God decided to give the Torah to the people of Israel, He knew that it's going to be taken as a challenge. He knew that throughout the generations there will be many Jews who will not believe. There will be all kinds of breakups, all kinds of interruptions in the continuous tradition of the Jewish people, the pious ones. He knew that from time to time there will be outbursts. 150 years ago there was the Reform movement, and so forth. And the age of emancipation with the intellectual movement, so to speak. He knew all this. How did he expect the Torah to remain alive until today? What was that God invested in His Torah that He was capable of trusting the Jewish people to still stay with the Torah until today? Knowing all the controversial issues that rise every generation. Every generation you have a Spinoza, you have an atheist of one kind with another kind of atheist. Every time there is always somebody who will come and teach you otherwise. Today is the professors of maybe in biology of the universities, of all kinds of... So what was that he invested in us that helped us to preserve the Torah to remain still alive even today? 3,030 and 300 years after its giving at the mountain of Sinai. God knew that it's not easy. And what is the proof that it's not easy? The nations did not accept it. Which means they didn't say, we don't want. They said, we can't. Which means they regarded themselves as inferior, and therefore, it's not for them. And God agreed, it's not for you. But what made God believe that we are capable of receiving the Torah? It's not that he took a chance. He didn't take a chance. He prepared us. God already decided that the giving of the Torah will be only to the Jewish people. Now he has to do something to prepare us for the receival of the Torah. Part of what I am telling you tonight is in simple words, but it is based on Kabbalah. So you should pride yourself to say that we have some notions of Kabbalah. God prepared us 3,000 years ago, more than 3,600 years ago he prepared us. Because he already swore to Avraham Avinu that with us will be the ultimate nation. We are the chosen nation. If we have been the chosen nation, that's the nation to whom he is going to give the Torah. But who is going to assure him, to guarantee him that the people of Israel will receive the Torah and then will preserve it for so many hundreds of years and thousands of years? For that Hashem worked very hard. First, he put us to work. He enslaved us for 210 years in very hard slavery in Egypt. Until today, many people will not be able to understand why God put us through that. And they don't understand that God was fashioning a special mind. A mind that belongs to a king and yet must feel like a very humble person. Where can you get such a thing? A king is a king. A slave is a slave. So, if nations of slaves are going to be slaves, nations of kings are going to be kings. But he wants a different kind of character. A kind of character that will be a king, but at the same time will be humble like a slave. The Jewish people, being the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, were the kings. I know it's not easy to say that. When you know the history of the 12 tribes, you know that these are exemplary people. The children of Yaakov Avinu are not any nation. The problem is that superiority is always dangerous. You feel superior. You cannot mingle with nations. You cannot have any association with anybody if you are superior. So God said it's impossible. I want a nation that is superior and yet feeling inferior enough to project its Torah throughout the world and to bring peace upon the world. He prepared us through the slavery of Egypt, but that was not enough. So he gave us a certain character. Through the slavery, the Jewish people were helping each other, contending with the poverty and the slavery and the harshness of times. That gave us a certain piece of resistance. It gave us the possibility to resist all the problems and vicissitudes that were to be our lot in the future. Which means throughout the generations, There are going to be many, many dangers to the Jewish people based on the jealousy of the nations. How are they going to be preserving themselves with all this terrible suffering? He put us through the slavery of Egypt to build in us a soul that resists, a nature that can contend with suffering. For many people it would not be enough what I am saying. But Hashem knows what He's doing. But now He wants another piece of character in the body of the Jewish people. He wants also what we call in Hebrew Mesirut Nefesh. All this comes as a preparation to receive the Torah. First, He has fashioned, He has molded us during those years of slavery to be that kind of nature that will be already different. A superior nature with an inferior feeling. Then He has to inject in us the power of Mesirut Nefesh, the will to sacrifice. To be willing to sacrifice yourself for the belief in God, for example. How is He going to obtain and build this in our character? How? So here, let me explain. Let me go back to last week's parasha. We said, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. Where did He give us the Torah? In the desert of Sinai. The Midrash tells us that God gave us the Torah in three ways. Through three natural things. The desert represents emptiness, right? Wilderness, no habitation. And then, when He gave us the Torah, He brought Himself with fire. Like it says, Vaya'al ashano ke'eshena kivshan. When He came down on the mountain of Sinai, He came with fire. Which means He gave us the Torah through fire. Right? And it says that He also gave us the Torah through water. Like it says, water is always likened to the Torah, because water quenches our thirst. And the Torah does quench the thirst of the seeker. Everyone who seeks. And he wants to know the answer to his problems. There's no other way but come to the Torah and explore it. You might find your solution there. Now He wants to invest in us the character of Mesirut Nefesh, the will to sacrifice, right? That's why He gave us the Torah in those three ways. Number one, who was the first one in Jewish history who gave himself practically for the belief in Hashem and the faith in Judaism, willing to even throw himself in the fire? Avraham Avinu. In Ur Kasdim. His place of birth was known as Ur Kasdim, named after the miracle that happened to Avraham when he was challenged by the king Nimrod, and he offered him either to change his views over idolatry versus his belief in one God, or to be thrown in the furnace. And Avraham, as everybody knows in the Midrash, threw himself into the furnace, and God saved him. But first, he didn't expect to be saved. He just threw himself to be willing to die. So God says, that's the reason why I will give my Torah through the fire. Because the first part was already given to us in our character through Avraham Avinu. When he was willing to give himself up, to throw himself in the fire, he injected in every one of his descendants the will to do that, more or less. And that's how, at least judging from the point of view of generality, the Jewish people succeeded indeed to do that. I mean, we are still Jews today. We have passed through a lot of fires. In the Jewish history, all you have to do is read Jewish history. You will see how many fires we have passed through. We are still here. That's a very big medal for the Jewish people. But this we should remember. This persistence, this stubbornness, this will that we have comes from Avraham Avinu. The second question, why did Hashem give the Torah through the water? It has to do with water. There was another Jew, and all the Jews that are similar to him, like many other Jews also threw themselves in the fire, like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Remember? Many Jews, even 500 years ago, there is a story of Ya'betz, alav shalom, one of the greatest rabbis that we had, the Ya'betz. He wrote in his book on Pirkei Avot, he said that I have seen with my own eyes Jews who forgot their religion. They forgot that they were Jews, and yet when the Inquisition demanded from them to convert to Christianity or to die by the fire, those Jews who did not keep any tradition, and yet they were willing to die by the fire. Where did they get this tremendous strength? Because in the very beginning, Avraham Avinu was willing to do that. So following him, many Jews did it. That's why God gave us the Torah through the fire. And then it says he gave us the Torah through the water. Another guy, and many Jews that are similar to him later on. But the first one who did it, who threw himself in the water for the sake of a belief, was Nachshon ben Aminadab. The man, when the Jewish people left Egypt, and then the army of Paro came and was coming with rage after them. And even the Jews stood and they said to Moshe, what are we going to do? What have we done? We are going to die. And Moshe started to pray. And God says to him, stop praying. Move. Move where? This is the ocean. And God says, plunge. Now we need the first one to plunge. And there was a first one. Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, from the tribe of Yehuda. He plunged. Which means he was willing to give his life for a belief, because at that time it was only a belief. And God made the miracle, and then the sea split. Because of Nachshon ben Aminadab and all the Jews like him, God gave the Torah through the water. That shows that even the water was a phase in the faith of the Jewish people. And finally the question is, why did he give it to us in the wilderness, which means emptiness, in the midbar, in the desert? Well, here we are going to find that the reason is that God said through the words of Isaiah, Yeshaya, Zacharti lach, Hesed ne'urayich, Ahavat kelulotayich, Lechtech aharai bamidbar, Be'eretz lo zerua. The prophet Yeshaya sings the praises of Israel, and he says, God says, I will always remember your kindness, my people. You followed me. After I gave you freedom from Egypt, I told you, come with me. Where to? To the desert. How are we going to survive? How are we going to drink? There's no water in the desert, no food in the desert. You were supposed to say, no, we don't want to go into the desert. And yet you all followed. You all came. So God says, I will not forget the kindness of your youth. Zacharti lach hesed ne'urayich. Ahavat kelulotayich. I will not forget the love that you demonstrated by coming after me in a land that is desolate and empty, like the Midbar. Therefore he gave the Torah in the Midbar. But all this comes to tell us one thing, that he built in us the will to practically give ourselves for the sake of the faith that we have and the Torah that Hashem will give us, that he gave us, of course. Now he invested in us the will of sacrifice, as we found in Avraham and the rest. And he gave us also, he invested in us that nature which is unlike any nature in the world. In the world you can find either kings or slaves. In mind, talking about minds. When you are a king, you have a mind of a king. When you are a slave, you have a mind of a slave. But God wanted to create a special humanity that is a king with a feeling of humbleness like a slave. And that will bring perfection upon mankind. And that's what we see in the Jewish people. Many Jews today will dispute what I am saying. Of course. Who do we think we are? But the truth is that even the nations know that the truth. All you have to know is always repeat to yourself, why is it that the world hates us? What have we done to Ahmadinejad? What have we done to Iran? I mean, when the Shah of Iran was alive, we were very good friends. We had a lot of business with Iran. What suddenly brought to their mind, to their sick mind, that we are their most hated foes, adversaries? What happened? What do they want from us? And why? Who can explain that throughout so many hundreds of years, the nations excelled in one thing more than anything else, the hate against the Jews? Why? Nobody will be able to explain to you why, except the Jew himself who understands. And many Jews do not understand that. But the truth is that the Torah is telling me this. The Torah tells us, Ab levadad yishkor, ubagoyim lo yitchashav, in Parashat Balak. And God says, I created you to be my nation. That has nothing to do with the other nations. Automatically, we became different. Those talents, not talents, rather those traits of characters, those qualities that He built into us to prepare us for the receival of the Torah, made us different than the rest of the world. And being different than the rest of the world is going to cause the nations, by nature, by instinct, to hate you. And you know, that's the reason why Hashem gave us the Torah at the mountain of Sinai. Why Sinai? There are other mountains. There's a mountain of Tabor, much more elevated than Sinai. Why did He give it in Sinai? Because our sages said in Sinai, in that place, in that mountain, was born the hatred in the hearts of every non-Jew against the Jewish people. Why is that? Of course, if you ask the Goy, why do you hate me? He will not know. He will tell you, because Hollywood, because you steal the monies from the banks, you are Madoff people. He will tell you all kinds of things. But all these are just excuses that they themselves need to know why they hate us. There's only one reason why they hate us. And it goes back long time ago, before the Jewish bankers, and before Hollywood, and before the media, and before everything. This hatred was definitely in tremendous and vivid action. Why is that? It started from the day God gave the Torah on the mountain of Sinai. Sinai, in Hebrew, it's like sin'ah. ששם נולדה השנאה של אומות העולם כנגד ישראל. כך כתוב בגמרא. The Talmud says, why Sinai? Because there, Sinai comes from the word sin'ah, which means hatred. The hatred against the Jews was born at that time. Why is that? Because the nations could not receive the Torah. And we received the Torah. So for them it appeared to be like if it is the fact that we are chosen. Why? But you refused. God will always be able to say to them, you refuse to accept. Yes, but perhaps if you have given us a prophet like Moshe. So God says, I'll give you a prophet like Bil'am. And Bil'am was more powerful than Moshe. And yet, instead of following positive traits of character, you went after negative traits of character. And why is that? God knew from the very beginning, because the Torah cannot be adapted to any mind of the non-Jews. As I already mentioned last week, the Talmud tells us, Torah ba-goyim al ta'amin. If someone will tell you that there is Torah among the Goyim, don't believe it. Except if somebody converted, as we have explained last week, which is the reason why even non-Jews, when they are as a fetus in the womb of his mother, he learns Torah. Why? To permit those who will come out and convert to be able to learn Torah. But we already discussed this last week. What is it that the Torah added to the preparation of our special mind as Jews. The Torah, for example, tells us many laws. And those laws were given to us to maintain our mind and our level as a very special nation. The Torah forbids us to eat non-kosher food. Have you asked yourself one day, why is it that we are not allowed to eat like all the nations? Why is it that they can go to any restaurant and enjoy themselves with the Italian food or any food? We have to stick only to the kosher food. Sometimes it's not easy to find kosher food. You have to go and buy a few fruits. Doesn't sound very fair, but it's worth it. The Rambam explains that non-kosher food causes to the mind of the human being to absorb some of the natural things that came from that animal. If it is a non-kosher animals, abstractical forces will be created in your mind also. In certain ways it will be almost like that kind of animal. That's why kosher animals watch their nature. By nature they are productive and they are nice. By nature. Of course, don't ask me. The donkey also is nice. But the donkey is already something else. It's totally inferior. He's willing to serve. What about the dog? The dog is a protector. God created the dog to protect, to be associated with human beings. That is true. It's very easy to love a dog, but the dog is behemoth temea. You cannot eat it. Why? Because he has a certain mission in this life. There's much more to talk, by the way, about this. When we will have a special lectures about animals, we will tell you more about it. But in the meantime, that's the reason why the Jewish people is not allowed to eat non-kosher food. To give them, to maintain the mind that they have received at the mountain of Sinai. To be able, remember, what was our question in the very beginning? How did God expect the Jewish people to preserve the Torah thousands of years later? And we made it. Don't tell me no. Against all odds. Against all the abnormalities. How come we still have this Torah? Especially that we know that the Jewish people went through so much. The nations were against us all the way from the beginning till the end. Go to those big nations that were before us. Where are they? When Greece started to populate the world, it had a Torah of their own kind. It had their own doctrine. They had their own civilization. They had their own poetry. They had their own philosophies. Aristotle, Socrates. All this showed that the world was very happy with the civilization that was brought to the world through the Greeks. Where are they today? Where are they? All this civilization has faded to practical almost nothingness. The Roman civilization, in the time of Rome, people could not believe that Rome will come to an end. It's impossible. Rome is so powerful, how can it go down? Where is it now? In the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians conquered the whole world. Do you know the civilizations of the Babylonians? You could explore their civilization in a lot of literature, and you will find that this was a world of magnificent magnitude, of tremendous buildings, of tremendous philosophies. Hammurabi and others. Where are they? All disappeared under the earth. But the Jewish people was also as ancient as all of them. We are still here today with the same Torah. The same Torah that Moshe received at the mountain of Sinai, letter by letter, word by word, phrase by phrase. Not even one letter is different. Does it make sense? It's impossible. How did we make it until today? Because God worked very hard before. First He put us through slavery to fashion a special mind of the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, very special minds. At the same time, with that which we call anava, humbleness, which is the crown of all the traits of character. Even today, all you have to do is open your eyes. Watch even, we are used to say that the Jews, the secular Jews in Israel are very bad. It's not true. They are still, compared to the nations, they are still the best of the best. Watch. How much the world defaces us. In the United Nations, those silly people, what they say about us. They try to incriminate us with all kinds of injustices. And yet, what is our reaction? Did you ever see a reaction from Israel with fuming rage? Never. We always accept whatever you want to think, you think. That's fine. Little by little, the truth anyway reveals itself and the world knows it anyway. Because the world is smart. They know. Oh yes, they hate us. That's why they cover what they know. But the truth is, when you uncover, when there is an interest of some kind that they have, they suddenly discover the Jew has to be really the best. And I discern this. I observe this from time to time when I listen to a show of some kind, a talk show, and I do hear between the lines, between the words, I see what is covered inside what they mean when they talk about the Jewish, and always talking about the Jewish people, always about Israel. What is so significant about Israel to talk about? That means it does interest you. Why is it that the Jew interests you so much? Because they know the truth, as we have said many times before. So God created in us a special force of kindness and goodness. Make no mistake about it, doctor. Don't you believe, chas v'shalom, that Jews are bad in any way. The truth is that the only reason why there is bad among Jews also is because of 2,000 years of exile, 2,000 years of pressures, 2,000 years of persecutions. But the truth is that the Jew is like a diamond which is covered with a lot of earth. You want to see the brilliance of the diamond? Clear out the dirt and then polish, and you will see the diamond in its most majestuous form and shape. That's exactly the Jew. Even the worst Jew today is better than the best of the nations. I'm sorry that somebody will probably hear me saying this. So maximum he will say that we are presumptuous, that we feel. The truth is that the nations know that. They know. No matter how many times I will repeat it, people still will not believe what I am saying. In order to believe this, you have to bring yourself into understanding the core, the source of everything, how it started until today. The fact that the Jewish people was capable to preserve itself until today, and to preserve that Torah which was given to us 3,300 years ago, exactly the same way it was given to us until today, is something that definitely makes us deserving of at least a medal. No question about it. That medal, the nations know. They know. They tried everything. They tried so much. In every generation they tried to eradicate us, either by force or by politics or by social things or by friendship or civilization or intellectuality. They tried every kind of way in order to bring an end to that which we call Judaism. And they did not succeed. Because as long as we have this Torah, nothing will happen to the Jewish people. I mean, as far as its generality. In order to bring this to be, God had to create in us forces, special forces. The force of character, the force of the mind, the force of the heart. So first, He created in us the power to be able to give oneself. He created into us the power of midot tovot, beautiful traits of character. I'm talking in general. In general, the Jewish people has a good character. You know, wherever you go, you live wherever there are Jews, all they succeed to do is to raise the price of the real estate. Why? It's always worth it to live near Jews. Why? Because near Jews you have the possibility to have parnasa. At the same time, you don't incur any danger. You could go outside in the night and walk and nothing will happen to you. This by itself is enough to give a medal to the Jewish people. Can you say the same thing about every other nation? Go to Mexico. Go to Brazil. Wherever you go, it's dangerous. Go to the Jewish state. It's not dangerous at all. Whenever I go to Israel and I see one thing, it kills me with anger, but at the same time I admire the Jewish people. Why? Because whenever I go to Israel, I want to go to Shechem. I cannot go to Shechem. I am afraid. I cannot go to visit Yericho. I am afraid. Even Hebron. I am afraid. But at the same time, when I go to Jerusalem, the boulevard is full of them, of the Arabs. Go into every store. Can I go to every store, of every Arab store without fearing? It's impossible. But go and watch with absolute and a total absence of fear. That's what you see on the face of those Arabs. They feel so safe among Jews that there is no logic why they hate us. There's only one fact that makes us hate us: jealousy. Jealousy is harder and more stronger than any other trait of character. And that's why, despite the fact that the Arabs know that with the Jews they can live happily ever after, that with the Jews they can rise to heights and to levels, they can have good jobs, they can have good parnasa, they can be happy, but they are willing to suffer and to live like rats just because they hate us. And that hatred is only because why they? Why not us? God gave them so much riches. God gave them black oil up to their ears. Did it change anything? Now they have no excuse anymore. The Arabs cannot come to God and say, hey God, you made us so poor, that's why we were bad. I made you poor. I gave you riches more than any other nation in the world. What did you do with it? You know, I'll bring again the same story about Gush Katif. We built Gush Katif in the proximity of Gaza. We made it look like Gan Eden. And then, through the stupidity of some of our leaders, unfortunately it was given back. Given back to obtain some peace. Instead of giving us peace, the situation worsened, and they didn't do anything with that place. They ruined it, they destroyed it, they didn't do anything with it. Why did we give it to them? I don't know. What have we gotten from that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Only worse. That's them, that's us. And yet the Jewish people goes on with its wonderful character. Wait, patient, liberalism. Give them and give them. Maybe one day they will accept us. Well, they will never accept us. They cannot accept us. It's a law of nature. The Talmud says, Halachahi, Esav soneh leYaakov. You can't avoid that hatred was instilled into their heart and spirit since time immemorial. It will not depart from them until the Mashiach comes. And then you will see how the world will change. So that Torah tells us not to eat non-kosher food. Why? To maintain the good nature of the Jewish people. God cannot give any chance to the possibility of Jews being similar to the nations. Therefore, we cannot eat a lot of kind of foods that are delicious. And we cannot eat it because it will change our character. God could not permit that. God gave us the laws of Nida, of the purity of the family. Jews, observant Jews, must keep the laws of the purity of the family. And what is the purity of the family? I mean, the woman bears this since time immemorial, since the birth of the world. The woman is the one who bears this in her flesh. That whenever she has every time, at a certain time in her cycle, in the month, she has a certain condition, and that condition brings a certain tum'ah. And the Torah tells us, you have to know, at that time you separate from your wife. Not spiritually, God forbid, physically. You are not allowed to be with her in the same bed. You are not allowed even to touch her. For how many days? Oh my God, I love my wife. No. Sir, you are going to have to hold it back. Hold it. 7 days. First 7 days. Or 6 days. Depending on her nature. And then after she's totally clean? Not yet, sir. Not yet. Stay where you are. Another 7 days that you count. And then she goes to mikveh. And when she goes to mikveh that night, after 13 days of separation, every month, she comes back to her husband like a new kala. And we have thousands of laws that tell us what we should do, how we observe those laws, how we have to be very careful, how not chas v'shalom to tamper with it. That if you do something, if you don't keep this law, is chayav karet. I don't want to explain. It causes certain spiritual distractions. But primarily what you should understand, by giving us a law like this, the law of Nida, the purity of the family, he wanted to preserve that special character that the Jewish people has. Because if you mingle and if you don't observe this law, you are going to become like them, which means you are going to become tameh. You will not understand what is tameh, because nobody feels and knows spiritual things that happen to us. And tum'ah, which means uncleanness, is spiritual. What will you understand? But the forces of spirituality that we have inside us will be affected. And therefore God says He gave us in the Torah a rigid law. You know, a rigid law, usually people give up. Usually people reject. Usually people, after a time, they go and they don't abide by it. Until today, Baruch Hashem, after 3,300 years, the Jewish people keeps the laws of Nidah properly. And if not all the Jewish people, unfortunately, then you should know that at least up to the last century, only in the last 60 or 70 years, when Jews stopped being religious, they stopped keeping this law. But these laws were kept by the Jewish people in such a way that is impossible to describe, with such precision and exactly as we see in the myriads of the books that we have. You will see how many questions regarding this law. People, women, they come to the rabbi. Tell me, am I kosher? Am I not kosher? I have seen something. I have seen a little bit of blood. Is this blood? But that's not the time of my this is the time when I am supposed to be clean. Therefore, what kind of... And the rabbi is supposed to see, sometimes to see the blood, depending on the rabbi who learns this course. If not, then we have to check in the books what's going on. And you will see millions of questions like this are discussed in thousands of books. Where can you find a nation that is discussing so many times and so much, in such a massive way, a law that is so difficult and so difficult for people to conceive? What do you want from my life? She's my wife. I want to be with her. And you come and tell me I shouldn't? Only the Jewish people. Only the Jewish people kept this law. And even today, non-religious Jews, like Persian Jews, like most of them, they keep the laws of Nidah, by hook or by crook. Unfortunately, many Jews in Israel and elsewhere, because of lack of knowledge and because of lack of belief and because of the external influences that came from all over the world, and with the modernism, the modern time, many of them stopped. And they are coming back. They are coming back. Baruch Hashem. Thank God, God gave us the opportunity to do what we call tshuva. So now, as long as we can go back and keep the laws of Nidah. If you keep the laws of Nidah, then you will feel a little what is to be superior in spirit, what is to be tahor, what is to be really a Jew. Unfortunately, yes, It is true that because of what happened in Russia, what happened in many other places in the world, many Jews didn't learn the laws of Nida. But today we have come now to an age in which everything is possible to learn. Baruch Hashem, you can learn through asking the rabbis. You could learn by taking classes. You could learn by checking in the internet. You could learn by writing questions. Baruch Hashem, the world now is full of possibilities, new possibilities that never the generation before had ever had. And yet they did it better than us. And today when everything is open for us, and nobody can say, nobody taught me. What do you mean nobody taught you? Now you could learn. There are books in every language that teach you this, all kinds of things. One can keep those laws, the laws of kashrut, the laws of taharat hamishpacha, the purity of the family, the laws of niddah, and all this, remember, why was it given to us in the Torah? Plus, so many other examples that I could tell you, of course, but where is the time? It's already passed, and we have to stop, right? So you have to know why all this was given to us Jews, just to martyrize us, just to make our life more difficult? No, to make our life more beautiful, to make our life superior, to keep us special. Because only the nation of God, the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, were capable to receive the Torah, to absorb the Torah, and to go by it, to live by it. Like it says in the Torah, B'chai Bahem. And the Talmud says, you know what is to live by him? What is to live by them? It means that you will find the real life through them. The world thinks that the real life is to be free to do everything you want. No, you know what is real life? It's keeping Shabbat. It's keeping the laws of Nida. That's real life. Otherwise, what is life? So every night you are in the same bed with the same... And then what? And then what happens? A divorce. All kinds of bitterness, all kinds of things. But the people who keep the Nida laws properly, very seldom you will find any case of divorce among them. And that's known. So you say, but that's besides that. That's besides the point. The real point is that the Torah was given to us with demands and obligations that maintain our spirituality intact and maintain our Judaism, and to preserve that very special character that God wanted us to have forever and ever, until the day when the truth will come out for all to hear and for all to see. I did not finish what I was planning to tell you, but this could be enough for Shavuot. I wish you a very happy and wonderful celebration of Shavuot. I hope it will make a difference by the fact that you will be able to sit, enjoy yourself in Shavuot, if possible also the first night of Shavuot to spend not in sleeping but rather in learning Torah. You will see every synagogue is open Thursday night, and we are going to spend the whole night in learning. Yeah. And that's how it is. Another demand, another obligation to the Jewish people. Wow, cruel. Who was the one what is this? They are so cruel against the Jewish people. But you see, that's exactly the secret of life. Because when you have everything easy, where do you find the most cases of suicides is only those people who have everything easy. Those who have everything large and easy, those are the ones who commit suicide. Why? Because they have no taste in anything. To have taste in life is to know also how to hold yourself when you want something and yet you say, I can't. When you have to go to sleep and yet you say, no, I'm obligated to stay tonight. Like our ancestors stood at the mountain of... why do we spend the night of Shavuot awake? Because they slept. That's true. They slept, and Moshe had to come and wake them up. In order to atone for that sin, we the Jews have to complete that and stay awake the night of Shavuot. There are other reasons, but thank you very much, Doctor, for saying it. That's the problem. So when the Jewish people received the Torah at that time, our sages say, it's not only them. It's not only those few millions who went out of Egypt received the Torah. All the souls of the Jewish people in the past, in the present, and in the future received that Torah. And that's why for the Jew, it's really possible to study Torah, to understand it, and to observe it. For the Goy, as long as he is a Goy, it's just impossible. That's a fact of life that definitely can be proven in many ways. And Ashrenu ma tov chelkenu uma na'im goralenu uma yafa me'od yerushatenu. How happy we are for the inheritance that we have received. How greatly lucky we are for having been chosen the nation that received the Torah at the mountain of Sinai. God bless you and Chag Sameach.